Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
We are talking about something more challenging than usual, because even when we talk about the India-China situation, we have the day's developments, we have a few things, some statements, and we then try and make sense of those or declutter those. Today, we are looking at many straws in the wind, many threads which are hanging loose in many places, and trying to connect them and put them all together. And frankly, I'm mixing many metaphors, but if you stitch them all together to make a kind of jigsaw, sorry for mixed metaphors, you will still find many pieces missing. So you have to also do a little bit of guesswork or a little bit of wargaming or strategy mapping or mind reading, if you can do such a thing like reading the minds of the Chinese. Now, what are the various things that we are looking at? One, the Corps Commander level talks resumed in Moldo, in the Chushul sector on the Chinese side this time. That's how they alternate. This time on the Indian side, on both sides, there was a diplomat to give it a more substantive content, so it's not just militaries. That's because the two foreign ministers signed that 5-point joint declaration in Moscow. So the two foreign ministries have got committed to restoring some kind of normalcy, and that's why officers from the foreign ministries were present. Also from the Indian side, the new Corps Commander who will take over the Ladakh Corps, 14 Corps, was also there. That's also his familiarization. So having said that, the talks went on for 14.5 hours and yielded, it looks like, nothing. So it's not as if the two sides got up screaming at each other, but they got up hoping to resume talks soon, and it did not happen today itself, because obviously both sides now want to consult their headquarters or principals or political leadership and come up with something. Now, as that happened, some other things emerged. The report came out from a Washington-based think tank called Stratfor, but one of the authors in the report is somebody familiar to us. That's somebody who tweets in the name de Trefsa, does not tell you the real name, but focuses a lot on the India-China, India-Pakistan situation, puts out a lot of satellite pictures through open source imagery. So we are looking at the facts that de Trefsa has thrown up, and also what Simtac, his co-author, has told Snehesh Alex Philip, my colleague and our defense editor. In fact, that story I'm sharing with you, you can read it. So this report tells you that somehow, now I've been saying that possibly it is because of 5th August 2019, the changes that Modi government made in Kashmir, and then the claim that India was going to go and grab Aksai Chin now, that the Chinese are reacting. This report, on the other hand, says that the Chinese probably have become hyperactive since the Doklam standoff, which was 2 years earlier than the changes in Kashmir. It was 2017. So because India went into Bhutanese territory to block the Chinese, because India saw them coming to what is called as Jampheri Ridge, we have spoken about it in the past, and then dominating or looking at India's Chicken's Neck area, the Siliguri corridor, India went there proactively and stopped them from reaching Jampheri Ridge. Now, this report with satellite pictures, and I'm sharing the pictures from de Trefsa, courtesy him, thank you very much, with you. So this report tells you that since 2017, that is in about 3 years, the Chinese are upgrading a lot of their military infrastructure along the entire line of control with India, not just Ladakh. So it's Ladakh, Arunachal, the central sector, that is Uttarakhand and Himachal Pradesh and Sikkim. And what's happening there is very interesting, that a lot of the emphasis seems to be to want to build logistics, and for that you should also read an article by Brigadier Sanal Kumar, who's a retired officer of Indian Army, which the print has carried today, which also talks about how the Chinese have put together their civilian and military logistics systems in Tibet now like this. So they work together. So they've improved their logistics greatly, because as the old wisdom goes, amateurs talk tactics, professionals talk logistics, which is what the Indian Army is now doing. In fact, you see all these visuals on TV channels and elsewhere, all these huge convoys of trucks. They are now stocking up their troops for food, ammunition, fuel, also water for the winter period when passes may close, when access may become difficult, because an army needs all the supplies not just to fight but also to sit where they are. So logistics are very important. The Chinese have invested in that. The second thing that they are pointing out, which is very important, the Chinese have made Chinese investments, military investments, have been exaggeratedly inclined towards enhancing air power. So this is done in two ways. One is by building new air bases. So the Chinese have built new air bases in this period, and you see some pictures. They've also enhanced and improved other air bases, that is making more hardened shelters, making space for more top of the line aircraft. So making more bases combat ready, more existing air bases, and building 3 new air bases. Why did that become important for China? Because it's been believed for a long time, and quite rightly, that when it comes to the Tibetan frontier, India has an advantage in the air. So one thing that Nehru government is criticized for in 1962 is not using air power, because it is said that if they used air power, China would not have been able to counter them. Why? Because Chinese army has an advantage because they come from Tibet, which is a plateau. So they don't need to come through tall ridge lines, where Indian army has to go across ridge lines. So Chinese army can move faster, but because Tibet is so vast, most of Chinese bases within reach of the frontier with India are on the Tibetan plateau or in nearby Aksai chain. So they are quite high already. And at that altitude, aircraft, particularly high performance fighter aircraft, cannot take off and land with their full complement of weaponry. So there is a warlord penalty, if I may call it like that, for operating from those altitudes. Whereas Indian bases are in the plains. Now, if you look at Ladakh, for example, Indian Air Force planes can take off from Ambala, they can take off from Halwara, which is near Ludhiana, they can take off from Adampur, which is near Jalandhar, they can even take off from Pathankot. Also, they can take off from Srinagar. It's only 5,000 feet. So they can still be quite loaded with heavy weaponry, almost their full complement, which the Chinese cannot do. So Chinese are now building more air bases in Tibet and Xinjiang region, so that probably even if the planes come from elsewhere and they are refueled, they can either be recovered, or more planes can be based in these air bases for air defense, because they might be trying to counterbalance this notion of Indian advantage in the air. Because see how the Chinese work now. The Chinese now have per capita income 5 times higher than India's. They've had 2 generations of single child families. So when a nation moves up on the value chain in terms of per capita incomes, etc., its ability to accept casualties become less and less. Look at the Americans in Afghanistan. In 20 years in Afghanistan, they've lost 2,000 lives, soldiers' lives. But this is unaffordable for them, so they've conceded defeat to the Taliban. They are handing over Afghanistan to the Taliban, making an Afghan-style sort of blood money deal with them and cutting their losses. Now, if you look at a country like India, in 20 years, India has suffered many more casualties than that in Kashmir. In fact, Indian police forces and paramilitary forces have suffered many more casualties than that fighting internal disturbances in India, particularly the Naxalites. So as a country becomes richer, its ability to take casualties becomes less, and China has the additional problem of 2 generations of single child families. So a Chinese soldier has no uncle, no aunt, no chacha, no chachi, no mama, no mami, no pupa, no pupi, no bua, nothing. Has no cousins, has no brothers, no sisters, no nephews, no nieces. Now, for that population to suffer high casualties I'm not saying Chinese cannot suffer casualties, they are a tough civilization, but it is a problem. And that's why Indian approach now seems to be that if the Chinese really want territory, come try and take territory. I will tie you down in a war of attrition, and I will raise the costs for you, and I will raise your costs in terms of casualties so much that it will no longer be worth your while. You cannot be using the human wave tactics that you used in 1962. That's a sound strategy. But that's why some smart people like, say, General H.S. Panag, who's a former Northern Army commander, they've sensed it. And that's the reason he wrote for us 3 weeks back saying that a close combat on the ground is now passé. It is so 20th century. Chinese will now like to fight you on other planes. So it is possible that the reason the Chinese are enhancing their air power so much, because besides the fact that they are setting up 3 new air bases, they are setting up 5 new air defense bases. What are air defense bases? Big radars, high altitude, low altitude, everything, far looking radars and other electronic equipment, tamjham, to figure out any activity from the Indian side, and also surface to air missiles. Now remember the Chinese have invested a lot in surface to air missiles. They've already got their S-400s operational. They've got a lot of S-300s operational. India has just ordered its S-400s. The first ones will become operational not earlier than sometime early in 2022. So the Chinese have invested all this in air defense, and if they build up these air defense sites like this, the purpose can only be to deny India the freedom of activity in the air in those areas. The second thing we must understand is that increasingly now, just as you don't like more casualties on the ground, you also don't like casualties in the air. So the old macho doctrines are now going out because your platforms are very expensive, and more than the platform, the life of the people operating these platforms is very expensive. You can still replace a Rafale in a month because the French will make 4 in a month, right? But to replace a pilot will take you a very long time. So no country now, once again, as the countries are moving up the value chain, they don't want to suffer casualties in the air also. So from the air also, the new weapons are standoff weapons. Ideally, you should be able to fire them from your own territory. So these Chinese air defense systems are probably directed towards denying India that space within its own airspace also, so India can operate from there. And of course, if Indian planes go in that direction, or if the Chinese plane come in our direction, I think it will be very unlikely if the Chinese planes cross deep into Indian airspace. A little bit is okay. Deep into Indian airplanes to do something, that's risky. Chinese will be, I think, a little bit risk averse in those areas because India also has pretty good air defense. But the purpose of these seems to be now to build strength in the air in such a way that ground combat, where Indian forces can tie down the Chinese ground forces, given India's wide experience in mountain warfare, the hardiness of its troops, they are trying to deny India that opening of trapping the Chinese into a long-term ground combat, something that has happened in the past with many forces and many big forces. So they don't want that. The other thing that they are doing that's very interesting, besides these 5 air defense positions and 3 air bases, there are 5 heliports also coming up. Now, the Chinese have a large number of helicopters. They have helicopters, they have a large number of drones. So the use of drone swarms, the use of helicopters for everything, not just for logistics, but also for warfare in assault attack mode, because whether you are attacking a tank or a defended mountain position, there isn't that much difference. And again, helicopters also now have standoff weapons. So you can do some of this while keeping your helicopters safer, unless your adversary's air power comes in and interferes there. To keep them away, you build these big air defense positions with new modern Russian missiles to be able to shoot deeper into the adversary's airspace. So I'm guessing, but I don't think it's a bad guess, I'm guessing the Chinese motives in these heavy investments in air assets, air defense, helicopters and drones. Because if you look at the psychological warfare coming out of China, one of the things that you've seen is these drone swarms, and what they say is these are coming to supply hot meals to our troops while Indian troops will be eating tinned cold food. But I think the between the lines message is that look, we can put other stuff in these drones. So 1,000 drones coming up on a ridge line can give you trouble. That's psychological warfare, but that's also the Chinese approach now, because they are looking at a situation where they can achieve some kind of an objective without suffering casualties. So this is one plus on Sun Tzu. Sun Tzu said, win a war without fighting. Now the Chinese may be wanting to win a war by saying that, look, I will fight, but I will not suffer casualties, or I will minimize my casualties. That way, this is Sun Tzu for the 21st century. So once again, I can't guarantee to you that I am right on this, but I think this is quite an educated guess. Now, where is this headed? Now, don't count on weather. Now, a lot of people say, oh, winter will come, then operations will cease. So before you count on the weather, remember that 1962 war, almost 60 years back, took place between 20th of October and 21st of November. So there are many factors there, and one of the factors is that in eastern Ladakh, in fact most of Ladakh is like a cold desert. In most of Ladakh, especially eastern Ladakh, snow doesn't fall, and that's what Snehesh Philip also tells me. Snow doesn't fall, at least not heavily, until mid-November. So your campaigning time is available up to mid-November. Remember, in 62, between 20th October and 21st November, the Chinese came in through Arunachal also, then Nefa, right up to the foothills. So up to mid-November, late November, operational time is available. So on the Indian side, Snehesh tells me that commanders are telling him that be very careful till early November, because nobody understands what the Chinese want, because they are obviously dragging on these talks. The other thing to look for is in mid-October is the plenary of the Chinese Communist Party. At that plenary, Xi Jinping has to speak. So again, have to guess whether he wants to speak there as somebody who settled with India and withdrew the forces and de-escalated, or he wants to be there as somebody who's claiming that, look, I put India in its place, they were becoming upstarts, I put my forces there, they also have their forces there, so either they listen to us or let us see, and after that then make other changes if he wants to change, or maybe calm things down, but we don't know. So that to expect a big change before this plenary of the Chinese Communist Party is a matter of guesswork. Logically, it would seem unlikely. It is 3 weeks away. Now, you come to the final issue, and why do you think the Chinese are doing it? And you know, we have gone over this many times in the past, and we've told you that there's all these all these impressions about Chinese being inscrutable. But one thing we know is the Chinese are not irrational, because if they were irrational, or if they were stupid like Pakistanis often can be, then they would not have reached where they are. And frankly, if Pakistanis were as smart as the Chinese, they would not be in a mess that they are. But we'll talk about Pakistan some other day. Now, why are the Chinese doing it? So one thing we have seen, Chinese ideally do not want ground combat. There, General Panag was right. Ground combat is 20th century. Chinese want to fight you in some other dimension now. Number 2, the Chinese are not surprised by the Indian response. Many people on the Indian side think that Chinese, oh, they thought they'll come pushing and India will run away, go down on its knees. But they've been surprised by the Indian response. God's own truth, I don't believe it, because that would presume that the Chinese are stupid, but they are not. They knew that India will react, particularly after they had seen India react so stoutly in Doklam, which is not even Indian territory, it's Bhutanese territory. And that's when Bhutanese did not, at least publicly, complain. So they knew that India will respond sharply and India will be firm. So they are not surprised. So when they've come in doing this, because they started this, when they've come in with a purpose, knowing that India will respond sharply and not give in. There is a pattern to this. There is a pattern. Engage in talks, move a little. See, Galban, for example, they distance themselves, because obviously again gives you the impression that they don't want ground combat. Straws in the wind. None of this is QED, it's all straws in the wind. But they want India to be engaged. Now, if they want India to remain engaged, but they don't want India to be able to engage them in a ground war of attrition, what is the next thing they want? Again, if they are not stupid, and we are presuming that they are not. So here are some guesses. Number one, they are raising the costs of status quo for India. They are saying, look, you want your borders to be as they are. They can be as they are. We'll not launch a war on you, but you will have to put all these troops, spend all this money, buy more equipment, buy more supplies, order more Rafales, order more missiles. It will upset your national economy, economic balance. It will upset your defense budget. It will also make you shift emphasis from your navy to the army, and will it also divide up your forces on a permanent basis between Pakistan and China frontier. So LAC will become a new LOC. You think you can afford it? Carry on, be my guest. I can afford it. So that is to raise the costs of status quo for India. Now, what do they want by raising the costs of status quo for India? Now, there are various interpretations, and I'll make one which is extreme on the negative side, and one which is extreme. I'm only saying positive side because I know that our negotiators are very smart, and they will not give in or give up anything that they don't think is prudent. So, on the very negative side, the most negative interpretation can be the Chinese are now so upset by 5th of August last year, and before that India's activism in Doklam. They think India has to be fixed now. So join hands with Pakistan in one theatre where China and Pakistan can collude. Once again, you go back to those maps around Daulat Beg Oldi and Karakoram Pass and Siachen and Sasirla, etc., and push India into some resolution onto some action on Kashmir that India can't sustain. Will they do it? I don't believe so, but it is a possibility on the most negative side. So I'm not counting anything out. The less negative possibility is just to keep India stretched everywhere, in which case what's happened in Ladakh will now happen in Arunachal, it may happen in Sikkim, it can happen in Shipkila in Himachal, it can happen also Barahoti plains in Uttarakhand, to stretch India out, which means really maximize the costs of maintaining the status quo on the borders with India. Now, if that is the Chinese objective, then what is the purpose of doing that? Because it raises the costs for the Chinese as well. Again, you have to guess, and maybe this is pure opium den guesswork. And don't think I am doing anything, I am smoking or eating or drinking anything that I should not. Opium den also is a metaphor. Chaddu khana bolte hain usko Hindi mein. So this is, I am thinking aloud that maybe Xi Jinping actually wants a border settlement, and he is telling you, look, you got used to the status quo now for 60 years. I don't think it's workable, right? Let us get together, do a give and take, do a package deal and sort out the border. Of course, he wants to do it from a position of strength, and that's where I said I don't worry about negotiations from the Indian side, because I know that Indian negotiators are very smart. That's one area in which they are smarter than even the Chinese, when it comes to border negotiations on behalf of India. So that's a possibility, and I take you back to 1988. 1988, when Rajiv Gandhi went to Beijing, Deng Xiaoping famously told him that, look, let's not try to climb the highest mountain first, let's go over the tiny ones. What he meant was that don't try to solve the border issue first, let's normalize our relationship. And he also used a line which is a famous Chinese line of wisdom, which is that maybe this generation does not have the wisdom to resolve those issues. So leave it to a wiser generation. Meanwhile, let's get down to business as usual. Maybe, I'm guessing, and as I said, this is Chandu Khana Opium Den. Maybe Xi Jinping is saying that I think Deng Xiaoping was right then, but he was right in the sense that there will be a wiser generation in future. I think I am that wiser generation, that's Xi Jinping, And Narendra Modi, if you think you are the wiser generation, let's now talk about our key issues, not about something else. So I'm looking at now all possibilities and doing scenario mapping and war gaming.